Good afternoon, distinguished delegates. We will now commence the Asia-Pacific Regional Webinar. The webinar will be disseminating the findings of the UN DESA's 2020 edition of the e-government survey. So I'd like to start off. If I could request, excuse me, the delegates in the room, could I kindly request that you take your seats or that you leave the room, as the noise in the room is affecting the audio and the ability of those online to hear the proceedings. Thank you very much. So a very warm welcome to all of you. It's our pleasure to have this opportunity to co-organize with our DESA colleagues this event. The e-government survey is a flagship of DESA, and ESCAP has been contributing regional perspectives on digital government over a number of previous editions, and we also contributed to the 2020 edition. I'd like to start off by expressing my special thanks to everyone who has joined this event. We are very privileged to have with us ministers, vice ministers, a wide range of country representatives, experts, and UN partners and other international partners. So we look forward to hearing from your highly valued experiences and practices that have emerged, and particularly in terms of how e-government services have evolved in response to the pandemic. I'd like to also express my thanks to Vincenzo Acquaro and his team from DESA for inviting ESCAP to co-organize this event. It's always a pleasure to work with our colleagues from DESA. And in this regard, I'm also pleased to inform that we are partnering with DESA on a new project on frontier technologies, technology policy experimentation, and regulatory sandboxes for promoting digital transformation. This project will explore the regulatory practices and approaches, and it will facilitate the sharing of experiences that have emerged in Asia Pacific. And there is really an interesting body of experiences that have emerged on these live, time-bound testing of innovations under a regulator's oversight. We have been conducting some consultations with our member states, and based on the expressed interest, we have identified Kazakhstan, Bangladesh, and Maldives as the pilot project countries, and then there will also be a number of other countries, a wider group of countries that will also be participating and will be sharing in the technical cooperation aspects and capacity development aspects of this project. So we're looking forward to starting the implementation of the project as soon as possible, and we will be doing this within the framework of the Asia-Pacific Information Superhighway and its stated objective of bringing affordable broadband to all. And I'd like to, before I conclude, just perhaps make a comment on two of the trends, that's clearly emerged from the e-government survey of 2020. And one is the good news that the levels of e-government services are on the rise throughout the world. Since 2014, all 193 UN member states are delivering e-government services through some form of online presence. And the result is that the average world e-government development index has increased from 0.47 in 2014 to 0.6 in 2020. And with the pandemic, we can certainly expect that this trend will continue to accelerate. And the second issue I'd like to highlight is that from our analytical contribution to the survey, we underlined the importance of large-scale digitalization of core public sector functions and the adoption of strategic rather than incremental or silo-based policies. And this is important in the context of the current pandemic, and it will continue to be important because we can expect that in future multiple crises will converge. And we need to prepare today for these converging crises and disasters. And so we need to build more resilient infrastructure that can absorb sudden surges in internet demand. And by building the resilience of digital government, we can also continue to guarantee the online services as well as ensuring that we safeguard people's data and privacy. So I thank you very much for your attention. And I'd now like to request my dear colleague, Vincenzo Acquaro, the Chief of the Digital Government Branch of DESA, to make his remarks. And I understand that Vincenzo has a problem with the camera, so we are not going to see him. But Vincenzo, we do look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, accept my apologies because I do not have my video on due to a low connection from my side. But as a Chief of Digital Government Branch at the United Nations and DESA, it is also my great honor and privilege to be here today for this side event and to welcome all the participants. As said before by Madam Moderator, this event is one of several initiatives, part of the fruitful partnership between ESCAP and DESA. Next slide, please. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues and experts, ladies and gentlemen, almost all my presentation will draw on global and regional mega trends on digital transformation. I will also introduce some insights from the report to illustrate how digital government has been playing a central role not only in responding to the COVID-19 crisis, but also for recovery and development. Next. The survey highlights a persistent positive global trend towards higher level of e-government development. At a glance, the 2020 survey reflects further improvement in global trends in e-government development and the transitioning of many countries from lower to higher AGDI levels. In this edition, 57 countries have very high AGDI values in comparison with 40 countries in 2018. A total of 69 countries have high AGDI values and 59 countries have a middle AGDI. With the 34 new entrants, 65% of member states are now in the high and very high AGDI group. This denotes a significant improvement in the level of e-government development around the world. In total, 42 countries recorded positive upward movement from a lower GDI group to a higher one, with only 8 countries in the low AGDI group. Next slide, please. The global average AGDI continued to rise, as Tiziana said, reaching 0.60 in 2020 in comparison with the 0.55 in 2018. All regions have improved their average AGDI since 2018, contributing to an increase to digital development worldwide. It is worthy to notice that Africa and Oceania made a notable progress, having increased their AGDI by 14%. Europe remains the leader in the e-government development with an average AGDI value of 0.82. All countries in Europe have AGDI values above the global average. But for the first time, Asia is the second region in the world in terms of regional AGDI, followed by Americas, Oceania, and Africa. Despite the significant progress made, Oceania and Africa still have their regional AGDI average below the global average. Next slide, please. At regional level, Asia increased its average AGDI by 10%, becoming the second most advantaged region in the world in the e-government development. Asia has further distinguished itself as the region with the highest number of countries that improved their AGDI rank by more than 15 positions. Countries that experienced great improvement include Bhutan, Cambodia, Syria, China, Armenia, Indonesia, Cyprus, and Thailand. It is also worthy to note that for the first time, China, Kuwait, Malaysia, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, and Turkey joined the group of the very high AGDI, raising to 15 the number of the Asian countries led by the Republic of Korea, Singapore, and Japan in the highest rating class. Next, please. In Oceania, 5 countries are in the very high or high AGDI group, and the remainders are in the middle AGDI group. While Australia and New Zealand are the highest world rating classes, the other countries in the region have an average AGDI substantially lower than the global average. In spite of this digital divide, Fiji, Tonga, and Palau moved up from the middle to the high AGDI group, and Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands transitioned from the low to the middle AGDI group, showing the ability of the region to move forward with e-government development even under difficult circumstances. Next slide, please. In terms of the e-government development, the LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS as a group have increased their average AGDI by 33% since 2016, which is higher than the average global increase of AGDI during the same period. Among these 3 specific groups, the LDCs have made the most progress since 2016, increasing their average AGDI by around 44%. With their transition from the middle to the high AGDI group, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Cambodia have become the leaders in the e-government development among the LDCs. Despite these progresses, LDCs have the lowest average among the 3 special groups, followed by SIDS and LLDCs. All of these 3 groups have average value below the global average. For landlocks, Kazakhstan is the leading country in the very high AGDI group with the second highest world rating class. For SIDS, if we exclude the very high AGDI leading countries Singapore and Bahrain, The 19 remaining are all in the high AGDI group with an average AGDI that is below the global average. Nonetheless, at a glance, the average AGDI for these three special groups remain well below the global average. This gap points to persistent challenges that continue to undermine the efforts for development of the countries in the specific groups. Next slide, please. Based on the survey, 2/3 of the UN member states have already reached the high level of e-government development. Those countries have heavily relied on digital technologies in their COVID-19 pandemic response. Based on the survey findings, during the crisis, many countries focused on providing information related to general health precautions and emergency numbers supported by public announcement on national portals. As the crisis intensified, countries began extending their responses using more social media channels to report on COVID-19 statistics and providing national policy updates. At a large stage in the crisis, more governments started using dedicated COVID-19 portals to centralize the information. Many of them moved further and, in partnership with private sectors, have implemented new services and apps helping in the fight against COVID-19. Next slide, please. To summarize, COVID-19 has forced government and societies to turn toward digital technologies and to stress multi-stakeholders partnership. To respond to the emergency in the short terms, to mitigate socioeconomic repercussion in the mid-term, and to mobilize new resources and adopt new regulations, policies, and recovery tools in the long term. But the developing countries cannot afford the crisis and the recovery alone, and more initiatives to strengthen international, regional, national, and multi-stakeholder cooperation need to be put in place to restarting their fragile economies and rebuilding their societies. The COVID-19 part is covered in detail in the addendum of the government survey. To conclude, a few info about the other parts of the survey not covered by this presentation. So e-government development is a rising priority in political agendas, also at the local level and for municipalities. Next slide, please. As part of 2020 survey process, e-government development were assessed also for 100 municipalities, and this part is covered in Chapter 4 of the report. Next slide, please. Participation is a key dimension of governance and one of the pillars of 2030 agenda. As for the other edition of the survey, e-participation was assessed and ranked, and the results presented in Chapter 5 and in the annexes of the report. Next slide, please. At the regional level, Asia as a whole is the second leading region after Europe, followed by Americas, Oceania, and Africa for e-participation. Next slide, please. With the growing technological capacities to process even larger and more complex data sets, the potential to a more data-centric and data-driven e-government is presented in Chapter 6 of the report. Next slide, please. This chapter introduces also the concept of data governance and stresses governments to adopt a holistic, all-of-government approach in developing an overarching data governance framework supported by a national data strategy, strong data leadership, and a data ecosystem. Next slide, please. Many countries in the world still lack the capacity to leverage digital technologies. Developing capacity for e-government becomes essential as digital government transformation involves far more than the integration of technologies in the governance. The next slide, please. A holistic framework with empirical pillars for building capacity in digital transformations are presented in Chapter 7 of the survey. So last one. For a more in-depth analysis, next slide please, I invite all of you to download our report from the UNDESA or from UNESCAP portal, or to access to our e-government knowledge base at the www.publicadministration.un.org. And I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Vincenzo Acquaro, for that very informative presentation, and clearly stressing the importance of the whole of government's approach, the strategic approach, and the transformation in many ways of cultures and mindsets. And I think the current pandemic is making this transformation a necessity and not a choice anymore. So we really appreciate the time that you took to present to us the findings. And let me also say thank you for staying up until 1 a.m. in New York and presenting these findings to us. We really appreciate it. So let me move now on to the country experiences. And it is my honor to welcome as our first presenter His Excellency Mr. Mali Jamal, the Minister of Communications, Science and Technology of the Maldives. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, let me thank you for giving us this opportunity. Let me take you to the Maldives e-government experience. Next slide, please. Briefly, I would like to briefly provide the e-government journey of the Maldives, starting with introduction to our ministry, history of e-government, and the current key initiatives. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Our ministry is a new ministry. It came into existence after 15 years of no science and no technology ministry in the Maldives. Our vision is to become a digitally empowered island nation. We will provide the necessary political leadership and vision, which is critical and absolutely essential in such a whole of government and whole of a society transformation. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. The early years, now let me briefly describe you the 15 years we have been trying to digitalize the Maldives. It all began in the year 2000 with the development of Science and Technology Master Plan. This was the first formal strategy for the government development. From 2000 to 2011, we were trying to build the foundation, starting with the establishment of agency dedicated to e-government development. During this time, the first major e-development project was launched, Technology Development Project, ICTSTI project from aid from Asian Development Bank. Then we started establishing community e-centers and started work on the government network. With the financial investments, we were able to start work on connecting all the government agencies by establishing a government-private network of the Maldives. At the core of this network, we were able to establish an e-government service platform. Next, please. Around 2012, we were bringing many of the visions of the master plan to fruition. The achievements of 2012 include establishment of National Computer Network, which connected all organizations in 2 cities and atoll capitals as well. By 2013, all the inhabited islands in the Maldives were connected. Development of government e-letter management system known as GEMS that helped save almost $1 million US. Transport online help re-engineer service from 4 visits to 2 government sites to 1 visit to test site only. Development of an expat worker management system that transformed and modernized expatriate worker management with the biometric-based system. Development tourism information management system, e-council system to re-engineer and automate all the processes in the respective organizations as well. Establishment of an e-citizen program that covered IT literacy, and also introduction of e-FAS that allows the use of one digital identity for all government electronic services. Next, please. Now, I will look into more recent achievements. In 2017, introduction of biometric multipurpose electronic card by Maldives Immigration as a passport. In 2018, My Edu portal was developed, facilitating the public to apply and view status of government scholarships and student loans. In 2019, 4 initiatives were taken, which include introduction of Haftares, supporting young entrepreneurs to showcase their talents and business in the weekend markets, establishment of Mage Way portal that allows public view, apply, and check availability for government housing schemes. Introduction of gov.mv that delivers information on government services to citizens from one single point of access, and a portal to promote local tourism called islands.mv. In 2020, eFirst version 2 was launched with improved functionality and new features. And Gammon module of e-council system was also launched that re-engineered birth and death registration process within local councils. Next, please. If we look at Maldives e-government development index from the UN surveys, we see that in the early years has been above world average. But developments has not kept pace with rest of the world or even our own region. One reason could be the removal of the portfolio from the government cabinet, leading to being left behind as the world and our region develop past us. Next, please. When we look at the ranking, which really compares the rates of development with respect to other countries, we see that we have really not invested in e-government development. When we look at how we are doing compared to our neighbors, Sri Lanka and India, we can see that it is time to realign our vision and make meaningful investment in the digital government transformation. Next, please. Next. Since the Maldives consists of small islands scattered across Indian Ocean, e-government needs to empower atolls and islands and also help bring meaningful decentralization, which is a key pledge of the current president, His Excellency Ibrahim Muhammad Saleh. And also, it should ensure participation and citizen centricity. We have to do it in a small island development context. Tiny island population separated across ocean. The digital divide is still very much a reality here in Maldives, especially affordability and service quality. And of course, a lack of financial and human resources. Next, please. Next, please. Some of the key initiatives, our immediate main focus on developing government gov.mb is a single point of information and services. And I'm not going to into detail of other key initiatives of the government. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. In conclusion, I would like to say that the UN e-government survey 2020 shows us that there is an urgent need for a renewed vision and immediate investment in technology and people for digital government here in the Maldives. Once again, I would like to thank Madam Chair for giving us this opportunity, and we look forward working with UN ESCAPE very closely. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for sharing with us the particular challenges that an archipelago nation faces, but also clearly significant progress that has been made in bringing innovative e-government services to all. And thank you also for underlining the need for immediate investments in the further development of e-government services. So I'd like to move on to our second speaker, who will share his experiences from the perspective of his country. And we're very pleased to have the opportunity to welcome His Excellency, Mr. Ablaykan Ospanov, the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Digital Development, Innovation and Aerospace Industry of Kazakhstan. Over to you, Vice Minister.
Hello, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear participants of the webinar. On next slide, please. On behalf of the Republic of Kazakhstan, let me welcome you today. I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak today and share with you the key ideas and strategic direction for digital government and global partnership. The latest events in the country related to the COVID-19 pandemic once again reminded us that we live in a closely connected world. The state of emergency, a sharp decline in economic activity, quarantine, self-isolation, we understand that the consequences of the pandemic have reached unprecedented proportions. The coronavirus pandemic will undoubtedly change the way we view the world. However, current situation has shown us that despite the huge challenges, we can continue to work, learn, and develop. We are seeing a clear increase in demand for digital services everywhere. Over the past few months, the situation in the world has changed dramatically. Many companies have transferred their businesses online. All countries have set the task promotion digital technologies as one of the main priorities for the coming periods. I would like to note that Kazakhstan is making significant efforts to develop digitalization at the national level and has already achieved certain considerable success after 2 years of implementation of the state program Digital Kazakhstan. The main direction of the program are digitalization of economic sectors, infrastructure, human capital, innovation ecosystem, and of course, e-government. The projects implemented within the program allowed us to adapt to new realities as well as strengthen close interactions between key economic sectors in the IT sphere. Today, we can say that Kazakhstan is one of the leaders of digitalization among the CES countries and Central Asia, and actively promotes the regional digital agenda. One of the key areas of development is increasing the availability of ICT. The main component of the development infrastructure is to provide access to the internet. This will create the condition for accelerating the adoption of digital solutions in industries including agriculture, trade, healthcare, education, and more. Today, Kazakhstan has one of the most accessible types of internet. Almost 84.2% of the country's population have access to internet. At the same time, we understand that for the successful development of processes based on digital technologies, it is necessary to develop the country's human capital. The digital literacy rate of population is 82.1% of people of Kazakhstan. We also actively developing an innovation ecosystem. Local IT companies, of which there are already more than 7,000, provide all sorts of support measures to enter the global market. Next slide, please. The new United Nations survey on the level of e-government development shows how the situation is with the development of e-government services in 193 countries. I'm happy to share, ladies and gentlemen, that this year Kazakhstan took the 29th place in this ranking, having risen by 10 positions compared to 2018. In terms of EU participation, Kazakhstan rose by 16 positions and took 26th place. EU participation index shows us the involvement of citizens in decision-making process, transparency and openness of state activities, which corresponds to Kazakhstan's policy of the hearing state. The results and analytics presented in the 2020 United Survey on e-government are studied in digital and will be taken into account to ensure that development of e-government technology in the country in the interest of its citizens, as well as to consider high position on this area on a global scale. The digital state provides open, transparent, and convenient opportunities for citizens and businesses, available online at any time. In recent years, Kazakhstan has made significant progress in the field of e-government. More than 83.7% of public services are available to citizens in electronic format. By the end of this year, we plan to achieve 90% of services provided in electronic form. The time for obtaining public service has decreased in 3 times. Documentation has decreased by 30%. During the state of emergency in the country, citizens had the opportunity to remotely obtain e-signatures through remote biometric and identification of person. The service was launched on the eGov website and provided to over 1 million citizens. The possibility of registration in database of mobile citizens by means of a video call has been implemented. This service turned out to be in great demand, enabling the citizens of Kazakhstan to use various services and receive the necessary certificates while in self-isolation. During the state emergency, more than 19 million services were provided to citizens. Today, 80% of employees of government agencies and national companies continue their work remotely and use different digital services. Next slide, please. Today, we see the importance of promotion and growing digital technologies. Our further vision to develop artificial intelligence, 5G, data analytics, and many other aspects. Today, more than 10 million people are users of the e-government portal, which provides about 800 services. Also, I would like to note that we are trying to provide our citizens with the most convenient use of e-government services at any time and any place. So, through the eGov mobile application, we can bind the existing e-signature to the built-in biometrics of the device, Face ID and Touch ID. One eGov mobile will provide almost 60 services and facilities. We also pay special attention to the provision of public services through the social networks and, for example, Telegram bot, through which 26 services are provided. To date, more than 5 million issued services have been processed through the Facebook and Telegram bot. In general, we have trained about 10 million citizens on how to get online services quickly and efficiently. Next slide, please. Currently, work is underway to regroup and rename public service under the life situations of citizens. In this regard, today we are actively introducing proactive and composite services. Now we have developed 27 proactive services that take into account events in people's life, which will eliminate the need to visit a public service center and even submit an application through the portal from a citizen. So some of the most popular services, for example, as the birth of child, which consists of 4 services, as well as proactive provision of public service related to reaching retirement age. Next slide, please. Composite services include several related services that will be provided in for example, in a complex. And for this, a citizen will need to write only one application. For example, in 2018, a service was launched for assigned pension payments, state basic pension payments, and pension payments from the Unified Pensions Funds for entrepreneurs. The processes of registering a legal entity has been simplified, in which with one application they can open a bank account and conclude an insurance contract. Next slide, please. Today, states are increasingly shifting towards the use of the latest technology for the transformation of e-government. Hence, the issues of improving the process of rendering public service are put forward to the level of strategic task of the modern states, and Kazakhstan in this regard is no exception. As noted in the survey, it was digital government that played a central role in overcoming the crisis, becoming an important element of communication and cooperation between government and society during the COVID-19 pandemic. The United Nations survey supports countries' efforts to provide effective, accountable, and inclusive digital service for all and to bridge the digital divide. As you know, on July 30 of this year, the meeting of the Working Group on Innovation and Technology for Sustainable Development took place, where countries agreed to continue improving digital connectivity and monitoring resilience as part of the Asia-Pacific Information Superhighway Master Plan. It should be noted that this project is very important as the broadband gap has become one of the crucial development problems. A number of advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence and blockchain rely heavily on reliable, resilient, and affordable broadband infrastructure and seamless digital connectivity. Therefore, we call on countries to actively cooperate on the development of a proposal for a new master plan for 2023-2026 as part of Asia-Pacific initiative of the Asia-Pacific Information Superhighway and presented it to the ESCAP community on ICT, science and technology. Kazakhstan. Returning to the topics today events, we underlined your commitment to the idea of a global digital partnership. Effective digital collaboration requires strengthening multi-stakeholder participation not only from governments, but also from a diverse range of other stakeholders such as civil society, academia, technology companies, and the private sector. In conclusion, let me once again sincerely thank the United Nations for the work done to assess the 193 United Nations member countries in the development of e-government. This ranking also allows us to see the readiness and capabilities of the country is a use of ICT to provide citizens with public service. We have something to strive for. Also, I'd like to sincerely thank ESCAP for the opportunity to speak today. I would like to wish all of us effective joint work in achieving sustainable digital development in current difficult conditions. Thank you very much for your attention. Stay safe.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister Osmanov, for very eloquently laying out the significant achievements underway in Kazakhstan on technology innovation. Frontier technology is moving very quickly in Kazakhstan. And I'd like to also thank you for the support you have expressed for the Asia-Pacific Information Superhighway and for recognizing that the addressing broadband infrastructure is the essential, even if not sufficient, condition for allowing the fruits of frontier technology to be leveraged. I thank you also for supporting the development of the second phase of implementation of APIS. And we will certainly do our best to work very closely with our member states on the development of that second phase. I'd now like to move to our third speaker, Mr. Sungju Son. He is the director of the Digital Government Cooperation Division of the Ministry of Interior and Safety of the Republic of Korea. Welcome, Mr. Son, and over to you. Mr. Son, we are unable to hear you. Perhaps you... Can you release your microphone? Can you release the microphone and request the floor again? Okay, so because time is limited, may I suggest that we move on to the next speaker, and then we will come back to Mr. Son. So we will give Mr. Son a little bit of time to figure out the technical issues he's having. And so I'd like to move on to the UN Project Office on Governance, based in Incheon, Mr. Bokyun Shim. And Mr. Bokyum Shim is the head of the office, and he will be talking to us about the capacity development activities of the office. So, Mr. Shim, you have the floor. Mr. Shim, I think
yes.
you... Okay.
Do you see me and hear me? Okay. Excellencies, Ladies and gentlemen, good morning or good afternoon. I'm Bo-Gyun Shim, head of UN Project Office on Governance, which is part of DPIDG UNDESA. It is my great honor to speak during this important event. I strongly believe that the 2020 UN e-government survey and this webinar will greatly contribute to developing digital government capacity in the Asia Pacific region, especially at a time when the need for digital government has become higher than ever for combating the COVID-19 and promoting sustainable and resilient COVID-19 recovery. Next slide, please. Today, on behalf of UNPOG, I would like to introduce our approaches to digital government capacity development, our capacity development activities in Asia and the Pacific, and share the way forward. As our office is located in Incheon, Republic of Korea, we have worked closely with the member states in Asia and the Pacific. Next slide, please. Firstly, please allow me to introduce briefly about UNPOG and its mandates. UNPOG was established in 2006 as part of DPIDG UNDESA. Its principal mission is to strengthen the public governance capacities of developing member states in Asia and the Pacific and beyond to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Next slide, please. To achieve this mandate, we take a holistic approach to organizing our capacity development activities in a coherent way, starting from normative work and research to building a solid foundation for conducting capacity development activities and ensuring that capacity development activities are result-based to create concrete and sustainable impact on the ground. We also ensure that our capacity development activities are need-based and demand-driven by better identifying capacity needs, gaps, and challenges. Next, please. In addition to conducting thematic research on issues such as instituting data governance for digital government, innovation in delivering public services to vulnerable groups, and e-government for sustainable development in cities, we are currently developing online training toolkit which also address leveraging ICT and the digital government for promoting government innovation for social inclusion of vulnerable groups and advancing risk-informed governance and harnessing innovative technologies for disaster risk reduction and building resilience. We also have launched the toolkit on e-government for women's empowerment in Asia and the Pacific in collaboration with the UNESCO. Next, please. Also, to better understand the needs of member states, we conducted the capacity needs assessment in 2017 to 18, and we are planning to conduct it every 5 years. The next assessment is planned in 2021. Next, please. Through this capacity needs assessment, it was learned that supporting innovative public service delivery and ICTs for development was one of the areas where member states needed capacity support the most. Next page, please. Countries are confronted with various challenges, so we need to develop the capacity development program tailored to specific country needs. Next page, please. Also, to better understand the capacity gaps and challenges, we recently organized 2 webinars for Africa focusing on leveraging ICTs and digital government and innovative solutions for addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. Next, please. From the discussions during webinars, we found out that each country has a lot of challenges with the digital government in the process. Major challenges discussed during the webinar include digital divide between urban and rural areas, lack of digital capabilities of government agencies, problems with cybersecurity and privacy, data collection and sharing, analysis, and the lack of preparation for innovative solutions such as e-learning and teleworking. Next, please. We have also learned that in order to improve digital government, governance systems need to be strengthened. We shared the need for redesign of the government's work process and the elimination of complex processes, civic participation in the design of public services, cooperation with private sectors, investment in new digital infrastructure, elimination of unnecessary regulatory barriers, and promotion of digital government ecosystems, and etc. Next, please. Based on these approaches, we conduct various capacity development activities in the Asia-Pacific region to support its digital government development. The activities are in diverse forms, including webinars, online toolkits, and online training, study visits, training courses and workshops, expert group meetings, and regional symposiums. Next page, please. UNPOG and the Digital Government Branch of DPIDG, UNDESA, in collaboration with the UN ESCAP, will dedicate our efforts to support accelerating digital government in transformation for achieving sustainable development by providing capacity development activities. We will especially continue to put out our best endeavors to support member states for better addressing the COVID-19 pandemic and building back better in the post-COVID-19 era. Next page 14. Digital government transformation and capacity development requires a holistic approach, just as articulated in the Chapter 7 of the 2020 UN e-Government Survey, which is on capacities for development, digital government transformation. We will continue putting our best efforts to provide our capacity development support in a holistic way with strengthened partnership with other UN and international agencies, academia, ICT industries, and civil society organizations. Next page, 15. Lastly, I would like to conclude my presentation by sharing some of the major lessons learned from conducting capacity development activities and our way forward. First, DPIDG, UNPO will continue assessing the evolving capacity demands of member
Mr.
states.
Shim, I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but we are over the time. So if I could kindly request you to conclude in 1 minute.
Okay. Second, we will also continuously follow up with the member states to ensure sustainable impact of capacity development activities. Third, we will continue facilitating active exchange of innovative practices for peer-to-peer learning. First, we will further strengthen its partnership. Lastly, we will continue providing various platforms. Thank you very much for listening, and very much look forward to continue working with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shim, for that comprehensive presentation. And from the ESCAP side, we look forward to continuing our partnership with UNPOG. Let me now turn back to our third speaker from our member states. And Mr. Son will also be the final speaker. And Mr. Son, if I could kindly request you to try to keep your presentation as short as possible, because we have already gone over the time. Over to you, Mr. Son. Mr. Son, we are unable to hear you. You try to switch on your mic and your camera, the two red icons in the lower part of the screen. Problem. Okay, so I'm very sorry about that, but we do seem to have a technical problem. We are unable to see Mr. Son, and we are unable to hear him. So our technicians have indicated. Yeah, yeah. So I understand that, Mr. Son, you have released the mic. Could you try one more time to release, to press the icon, the request, the mic and the camera icon? Okay, we do not seem to be able to resolve the issue, so it's with much regret that we will not be able to hear Mr. Son's presentation. Nevertheless, we do have the PowerPoint. Okay, we're trying again. I see we are trying again. Let's try one final time. No, I don't think it's working, and we also do need to move on, I think. Oh, okay, now I think we are good now. Still not working. So I think we will now need to conclude the session. So I'd like to once again thank everyone who participated and contributed so generously to this event. And so I'd like to express my sincere thanks to everyone. And so we will now close the session and conclude. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.